माननीय मंत्रीगण श्री हर्षवर्धन जी, श्री राधा मोहन जी, श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारामन जी, श्री वाई.एस. चौधरी, हमारे फॉर्मर सेक्रेटरीज डॉक्टर मंजू शर्मा, डॉक्टर M.K. भान, डॉक्टर रेणु स्वरूप और आप सब लोगों को हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी की ओर से. Today it's a very moving day, it's a very important day for the Department of Biotechnology, and in many ways those of us who are inside are at a loss of words to express what we'd like to say about both our journey and about our plans for the future. The movie which you saw just now captured many of the facets of what has happened, and one could actually go on and recount all the aspects of what the DBT has done over the years, and I will do a little bit of that. But we must also principally keep in mind what the challenges are today and what our mood is and what can a small department such as the Department of Biotechnology do in the current context. Today, if you look around the world and look at India, there are many views one can take about India. That it has a great future, it's a growing economy, it has many young people, and that is one view, and that's a very positive view, and that view needs to be grasped by many of us. Many people who look at numbers and statistics try to pull us to reality and say, look at the map of tuberculosis in the world, or malaria, or filariasis, or poverty, or female feticide, or education. And in all these parameters, India falls very, very short. So they ask us, how is it that you have such great aspirations? How are you going to deal with such realities at the same time? Is it not an impossible task? And that task, certainly, the Department of Biotechnology has shown that these difficult tasks are not impossible ones, but more fundamentally, our country has shown that these kinds of tasks are not impossible tasks. We must not forget that at 1947, when India became independent, what we had left by the British is really pretty much the railways and universities which allowed us to speak a language which was then alien to us, and now, like cricket, has become more common. But our literacy at that time was a few percent, about 6 or 7%. Our lifespan was very low, in the late 30s. Disease was rampant. Children died at birth, and that changed dramatically over many, many years of independence, step by step. How did that happen? How did the polio vaccine program eliminate this disease from our country? How are the other vaccination programs? How is it that far fewer children die at childbirth than they used to? How is our literacy so much higher? How is our lifespan in the high 60s now, and could potentially 75 years after independence become 75? These came about not by merely stating the problem constantly, but by actually grasping specific solutions and implementing them. Many of us today have a tendency to constantly, when asked what they are going to do, we always say that we will do a lot if only something else someone did was better. We ask the government to be better, we ask our state governments to be better, we ask our institutions to be better, we ask our funding agencies to be better, but we also need to ask what we will do to actually make things better, because we are all of these. We are the government, we are the state government, and we are our institutions. And unless we participate in the solutions, we are not going to actually solve these incredibly complex problems. So these complex problems have been solved in the past by us, and they can be solved again by us right now. In that regard, let me give you very briefly, I was just talking to Professor P.N. Tandon before we started about the origins of the Department of Biotechnology. And it's wonderful that Dr. Manju Sharma is here, Dr. M.K. Bhan is here, and several major people involved at that time, Dr. Mohan Ram, Dr. P.N. Tandon, all of them are here. And we must acknowledge them and the early founders of DBT for the initial successes. The Science Advisory Council Committee to the Cabinet said that India should not fall behind in the emerging biotechnology revolution in the 1980s, and suggested the formation of a biotechnology department, starting first as a part of the Department of Science and Technology. And Professor M.S. Swaminathan was the chair of the council at that time, and later on Professor M.G.K. Menon. And this idea was on one hand welcomed by the Prime Minister of that time, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and on the other hand there was a serious concern of where is the money for that going to come from, because this is a mid-term planned request which came up. And after a lot of persuasion, a sum of 20 crores was set aside mid-plan, and Dr. Ramachandran was asked to chair the first biotechnology board. The paperwork for him to actually get started took place a little later, but he started right away. And it was amazing with what zeal and enthusiasm he started, and how that actually set the foundations of the culture of the Department of Biotechnology. For example, Professor Tandon wanted a small sum of money to have experts come and look at neural transplantation at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and this was actually agreed to immediately, as also other granting mechanisms. So the initial culture of the department was to actually trust scientists, trust the scientific community, trust leaders in science, and make sure that they were facilitated. We must remember at that time when the Biotechnology Board started, it was very easy for it to have focused on certain kinds of areas such as antibiotics or fermentation technology and become a hardcore biotechnology department and neglected the foundations of a lot of biotechnology. And because of Dr. Ramachandran's leadership, not only did that not happen, but there was a culture of actually being interactive and inclusive with the community. Today, since then, the biotechnology department has grown hugely. Dr. Ramachandran was followed by Dr. Bhatia, and then by Dr. Manju Sharma, and then Dr. M.K. Bhan, and they're all here. And it is amazing what has happened over the years. There are many major areas we attend to: human resource development, promotion of excellence and innovation, biotechnology facilities, bioinformatics, basic and translational R&D, and we have taken on many grand challenge programs to solve many major problems. Biotechnology for societal development is a major area. International collaborations and our aided institutions are one component of our institutional support. It goes far beyond those. And we also have now clusters of institutions and incubators coming, and industry and manufacturing partnerships in a big way. At the core of all what we do are people. Everything else, whether it is building institutions or interacting with industry and so on and so forth, are gambles. Each institution we build will work either in a short term or a mid term or a long term, we don't know. But if we invest in people, we will always ensure that they will succeed in the short term. And this has happened enormously. And our human resources program stretched to support for there are some areas where DNA clubs even for school children, but for our colleges and for after that there are extraordinary programs. Our Star College programs, for example, have gone all over the country. We are strengthening about 82 colleges, and we will now do far more over there. And these programs really have stimulated, not just in biology departments, but in physics, chemistry, mathematics departments, young students using biology to understand nature and get on to their careers. And this has resulted, as we've heard, in an extraordinary drug and vaccine industry also, and the people who are in those places actually come from these kinds of programs, as also other programs which have brought back our top scientists, young scientists from all over the world. The Ramalinga Swami program, the Wellcome Trust DBT Alliance programs, these have been, again, we have had recent reviews of those. They have been incredibly effective, and we need to expand on that. At the heart, again, of our interactions with the scientific community is a competitive grant system which, bottom up, looks at proposals both for capacity building and for excellence, and these actually have grown over the many, many years. keeping the spirit of what Dr. Ramachandran started, which is to be proactive and helpful to scientists. Our size is so large now that our processes need to be much better, much more strengthened. We're doing that, but we are actually scaled up rather substantially to a large variety of programs. Now, what has happened, and we can see this, and we often rightly criticize it, is that when we look at our institutions, they are extraordinary pieces of architecture, quality scientists, quality science, but we really see that they need to talk to each other a lot more. In some sense, this isolation is important to build quality, but connectivity is important for society. Having built many institutions, we are now learning to build new ones with connectivity embedded in, but we are also pushing hard for our older institutions to connect with each other. This has resulted in the formation of bioclusters, as we call it, and we are going to expand these bioclusters. These clusters are in Kalyani, in Mohali, in the National Capital Region, developing in Pune, a strong one in Bangalore, and others which are coming up in other regions. Another one will come up in the capital in South Delhi. So these kinds of interactions will actually push and break institutional boundaries, but more importantly also bring in students from neighboring institutions. For example, in Delhi, we have the National Institute of Immunology, the International Center for Genetic Engineering, the Plant Genome Institute. These are adjacent to the Jawaharlal Nehru University and the IIT and to AIIMS, and this interaction will actually make this a competitive world-class hub, and which is what we are trying to push right now. These clusters focus on a variety of different areas depending on their location and strengths. There's an agriculture, healthcare, bioresources, energy, and so on. But these have resulted in a whole variety of new programs, from science to processes to products. And I'll run through some of them. We know about the success of the rotavirus vaccine, and that was led by Dr. Bhan when he was an assistant professor at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. We are very, very proud of that. But a very important point to remember is that was first of all anchored in quality people, and the way it grew because of collaboration between the DBT, the ICMR, other agencies here, and international agencies. The development of vaccines and drugs is a hugely complex process, and disease, like science, knows no boundaries, and we really need to be interactive in developing new vaccines. And this has got a major push recently with our vaccine programs, and these will actually be very important new programs which will start. In agribiotech, under Dr. Manju Sharma's leadership, India took a major thrust in our biotech push into the country, but we also collaborated in the Rice Genome Project, led then by Akhilesh Tyagi and other colleagues in Delhi, and that has been followed now by an extraordinary chickpea program, and another one with people in Punjab, a wheat program. With our understanding of genomes of plants, which is now much, much better, we can actually now move our breeding programs much faster in ways which are both GM and non-GM depending on the context. But the regular breeding programs can move very rapidly because of the pulse genome and other crop genome projects which we're pushing in very rapidly. This has resulted in a variety of marker-assisted breeding, for example, of rice, which is drought-resistant and flood-resistant, which can grow on high salinity, and these now are being taken through the Indian Council for Agriculture system to be actually introduced into the farm sector. I must say that we had, it's a great pleasure to have the Krishi Mantri here. The Prime Minister had a set of meetings on various topics with a variety of, with groups of secretaries, and one of the groups was on farmer-centric agriculture. And it was amazing to see how interactive all the secretaries in that group were with their departments and came up with extraordinary programs for farmer-centric agriculture, many of which are anchored in science and technology. So we will take all those forward. They include major programs on livestock genomics, pulse genomics, and on the study of livestock diseases and vaccines. Nutrition, of course, is a major challenge, and I must use this opportunity to say that we, as a Department of Biotechnology, are not the Ministry of Agriculture, we are not the Ministry of Health, we are not the Ministry of Petroleum and Chemicals and Fertilizers, yet we have the ability to bring the best of science and technology anchored in life sciences and biotechnology into these departments. And addressing severe and acute malnutrition has resulted in us being very proactive in, for example, 5 ready-to-eat therapeutic food formulations, and pilot-scale plants for this for rice and other cereals are there, and we are scaling up in collaboration with state governments on this in a big way. Our collaboration with state governments actually on these and other areas have increased hugely in the last couple of years, and that is going to be a major way by which we take our successes in science towards application. In diagnostics and applications and devices, we have done very well. I won't list those, but whether it is for dengue and hepatitis diagnostics or celiac disease, we have had, and many others, we have got major programs. I started by saying how there are many issues in India which we worry about disease and malnutrition. And one of the major challenges in India is that in the 0 to 5 year period, 0 to 5 year age, stunted growth is a major problem. And we all talk about what the reasons for that are. They could be malnutrition, they could be iron deficiency, micronutrient deficiency, hygiene, sanitation, and so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is we don't know why this happens, and we don't know why this stretches across in many contexts across socioeconomic divides. There's been a major program we started on multi-institutional program on preterm birth, trying to understand this. And this has a cohort of pregnant mothers whose pregnancy and their children are followed. And this will, I'm sure, result in very rapid interventions and in this very important area, and actually will result in treatment. And this is an example of how valuable basic science, basic understanding of human biology can rapidly be taken into the field. And this is where departments such as the Department of Biotechnology can play a very great interactive role. Similarly, in the area of energy, many years ago, we funded a program in the Institute for Chemical Technology at Mumbai, and that has resulted into a major large-scale pilot plant converting lignocellulose to ethanol, and that's now being taken by a cabinet secretary's committee by the oil manufacturing companies into scaling up using agricultural waste for making ethanol. So these are the kinds of programs which we're seeing across the spectrum in agriculture, in health, in energy, in nutrition, which are the results of our 30 years of effort. Now there's another issue here which we find often in our interactions with our educational institutions, with our research institutions. And this is really taking the extraordinary successes and investments of our science in these institutional contexts to industry. There is a huge thrust of energy which we see in the startup sector, but frankly that is largely pushed very easily in our context in the e-commerce sector. Can we get this startup energy to come into areas which impact on Bharat in addition to impacting on India? Can we get this startup energy to come into impacting on real things which we can feel, which we eat, which are required for our health, rather than on very useful applications which allow us to get a taxi at will? The Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council is a DBT public sector undertaking which pushes innovation and entrepreneurship across the spectrum from early stage, from enabling the ecosystem to commercialization with industry partnerships. And this has resulted in the short period of its existence over the last 3-ish years. This was started by Dr. M.K. Bhans under his leadership, and that has gone extraordinarily well in stimulating entrepreneurship. And now this is a big challenge for us, how to move from here to the new area. Similarly, we had under Dr. Manju Sharma's leadership many state biotech parks. They came at a time when there was more focused central investment, and these now need to work with each state, both greenfield states such as we have Andhra Pradesh, which is a new state, and other states where there have been already investments such as Uttar Pradesh, where we have a very successful biotech park, to see how new science, new technologies can work with states in a new manner. And this is a major thrust. Finally, the Northeast is a very exciting area of our interactions. The DBT sets aside 10% of its budget for the Northeast. And many people told us, well, how will you manage to spend? If you just give the money, nothing will happen, and so on and so forth. And this again is, a list of problems rather than listing solutions. Our Northeast cell has worked hugely interactively with the Northeast, and that's resulted in extraordinary programs across the scale, from human resources, institutional building, and twinning with the rest of the country in a manner which these programs have really done very, very well. And you'll hear more about that later on. Internationally, again, it's important to keep in mind that health, disease, science, and opportunity are global. We have such a large number of talented young people that if we train them well, they can not only transform India, but they can actually transform the world. So our international programs stretch across the world, and we not only now have programs which benefit us by international collaboration. India is actually taking the lead in many international collaborations. There's a thrust now for new vaccine programs. As you know, the Indian vaccine industry is huge. As our Honorable Minister mentioned in his movie, 2 out of 3 children in the world receive a vaccine made in India, but we are now going to push to make sure that the pipeline of new vaccine is also led by India. Similarly, there's a major new initiative in marine biology. India has got a huge coastline, over 1,000 islands, and we will have our laboratories from the Andamans to the Lakshadweep and Peninsular India collaborating internationally to explore marine biology and marine biotechnology. So I'd like to end here. I will not go on much longer. We have our other ministers who will tell us about their views, particularly our agriculture minister, because agriculture is so very important. And I'd like to thank you again for being here today. And I'd like to thank our dignitaries on the dais and all of you again for joining us in celebrating 30 years of DBT. Thank you very much.